Behold, how the diverse peoples and kindreds of the earth have been waiting for the coming of the promised one. No sooner had he, who is the Son of Truth, been made manifest, than lo, all turned away from him, except them whom God was pleased to guide. We dare not, in this day, lift the veil that concealeth the exalted station which every true believer can attain, for the joy which such a revelation must provoke might well cause a few to faint away and die. Bahá'u'lláh. The divine springtime is come, O most exalted pen, for the festival of the All-Merciful is fast approaching. Bestir thyself and magnify before the entire creation the name of God, and celebrate his praise, in such wise that all created things may be regenerated and made new. Speak and hold not thy peace. The day star of blissfulness shineth above the horizon of our name, the blissful, inasmuch as the kingdom of the name of God hath been adorned with the ornament of the name of thy Lord, the creator of the heavens. Arise before the nations of the earth, and arm thyself with the power of this most great name, and be not of those who tarry. The best beloved is come. In his right hand is the sealed wine of his name. Happy is the man that turneth unto him, and drinketh his fill, and exclaimeth, Praise be to thee, O revealer of the signs of God. By the righteousness of the Almighty, every hidden thing hath been manifested through the power of truth. All the favors of God have been sent down as a token of his grace. The waters of everlasting life have, in their fullness, been proffered unto men. Every single cup hath been borne round the hand of the well-beloved. Draw near and tarry not, though it be for one short moment. Bahá'u'lláh. So I'm so excited to introduce our speaker today. And just a reminder to save your questions until after our talk, when we'll have the question and answer portion. And if you're new to the Baha'i Faith, or if you'd like to be added to our mailing list, you can fill out the Google form that I will put in the chat. So our speaker this week is Dr. Haideh Sabet, and her topic is A Tribute to the Life and Station of Bahá'u'lláh. Dr. Haideh Sabet is a neurologist practicing in Alexandria, Virginia, and also serves as an assistant professor of neurology at the Georgetown University Medical Center in Washington, D.C. She and her husband, Dr. Sina Sabet, and their son, Cameron, reside in Fairfax County and are members of the Fairfax East Baha'i Community, where she serves as a member of the local spiritual assembly. And with that, I'll hand it off to Dr. Sabet.
Thank you so much, Bayan. It is wonderful to see everyone here. And I'm very grateful to our hosts for allowing this nice, open, and inclusive forum to help us share the message that we all feel, I feel as a Baha'i, so very deeply happy and just so blessed to recognize the manifestation for this day. And I love sharing this with people. So I'm so very happy to be able to have the opportunity to do that today. Thank you. I have chosen this particular topic because, as some of you may know, we're just about to embark on a celebration, the twin holy days of the Baha'i Faith, which is the birth of the Bab and the birth of Bahá'u'lláh. And we will go through both of these figures today. They are very precious to all Baha'is around the world. They have written volumes, and I would ask that each of us take the time to really carefully read these writings that they have shared with humanity for the next 100,000 years. I ask that each of us take the time, even if it's online, just to look up some of the tablets and the books that I will share with you today, just to see, does it touch our hearts? Does it move us to explore more about the Baha'i Faith and to understand this spiritual heritage that we all have, that is that shared spirit that has always been with humanity since the beginning of time? I also want to share that I am not a clergy member nor a scholar of Baha'i writings. I have no authority in any way. I'm only sharing my own personal study of Baha'u'llah's life and impact. and ask that each of us investigate truth for ourselves. This is one of the tenets of the Baha'i Faith, that is independent investigation of the truth. We have an ocean of divinely inspired writings. One of the places that we can go to is Baha'i.org, and many of the prayers that we can recite on a daily basis can be found there and online, and they just help to nourish our souls. I also ask that each of us try to really keep that flame alive in a very materialistic world that we live in, because it's through that life of the spirit that we do believe our life begins in this physical world and continues on for many, many, many years to come, and it is endless for eternity as we help to polish our souls, not just in this world, but in the worlds to come. So I want to take us back to a place that is 6,315 miles away from where I am in DC. It is Tehran, Iran. And it was there that a man by the name of Mirza Hussein Ali was born on November 12th, 1817, with all of the advantages conferred by noble birth. His father served in a high position in the government, and it was assumed that he would take on that role of his father upon his death. But Mirza Hussein Ali chose to devote his energies to the care of the poor. And in fact, he was named Father of the Poor. And he and his wife would stand outside their home and they would give money to those who would wait behind their door. Later, as a divine messenger of God, Mirza Hussein Ali, who would become Bahá'u'lláh, whose name means the glory of God, would write these words. He said, "To give and to be generous are attributes of mine. Well is it with him that adorneth himself with my virtues." So Mirza Hussein Ali showed no interest in seeking position or prominence. Soon there was a declaration by a young man at the age of 25 by the name of the Bab, whose name means the gate, who declared that he was in fact a messenger of God, ushering in a new age of enlightenment and hope. And during his brief ministry of only 6 years, the Bab wrote numerous books foretelling the coming of, quote, the one whom God shall make manifest, and exhorting the people of the time to cleanse their hearts in preparation for this new messenger of God, who would bring about a divinely inspired revelation that would overshadow his own. Soon Mirza Hussein Ali accepted this message of the Bab, never having met him in person. And with this acceptance, life permanently changed for this nobleman and his family, and the life of material wealth that they enjoyed. He put all of his energy and influence into promoting this new faith. He was a part of a new movement, a new spirit in the country of Iran. And in June to July 1848, a significant gathering occurred. It was a gathering of 81 Babis, or followers of the Bab. This took place in a village in the northeast of Iran named Badasht. And here Mirza Hussein Ali played a central role in its proceedings, which affirmed the independent character of this new religion. From this time onwards, Mirza Hussein Ali was known as Bahá'u'lláh, who I mentioned means the glory of God in Arabic. Of note, it was here that one of the followers of the Bab, her name was Tahireh, who herself was one of the first believers in the Bab, and in fact, one of his disciples, never having met the Bab in person as well, unveiled herself in that public gathering, the first time of public unveiling of a woman in the history of Iran. Just so that you know, around that time, on July 19th, in 1848, there was a 2-day Seneca Falls Convention. It was heralded as the first American Women's Rights Convention that was held in the Wesleyan Chapel in Seneca Falls. And there was a former slave, Frederick Douglass, who was present, one of the few men who were present at the time, and he added his signature to the Declaration of Sentiments, which included the words, quote, "All women and men are created equal," and called for a long list of women's rights, access to education, job opportunities, and the right for women to vote, which was very forward-thinking at the time. Baha'u'lláh would later declare that the equality of women and men is in fact a spiritual principle necessary for the establishment of world peace. He would also say that the elimination of prejudice of all kinds would need to be firmly established in the world as part of the blueprint for the next stage in humankind's development, in helping to bring about that kingdom of God on earth as hoped for by all and recited in the Lord's Prayer from Christ himself, quote, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Going back to the Bahá'í faith, that community of followers grew tremendously, and so did the fierce opposition that was evoked in the government at the time, the government of Iran. Thousands upon thousands of Babis, or followers of the Bab, were subjected to the most cruel and barbaric treatment. Many were put to death, blown out of cannons, bodies pierced with candles, dragged through public squares to be mutilated by the masses, encouraged by the government, and branded as infidels. In 1850, the Bab himself was publicly executed, an event that was witnessed by 10,000 onlookers, including one of Queen Victoria's envoys, who sent his account of that moving scene to the Secretary of State of Foreign Affairs, which you can find online and read yourselves. 2 years later, in 1852, Baha'u'lláh, as a devoted believer in the Bab, was arrested and conducted barefoot and in chains through the streets to a notorious subterranean dungeon known as the Black Pit in Tehran. This dungeon had once been the reservoir for a public bath, and down a narrow set of stairs in the dark, he and other Babis were then numbered among the over 100 prisoners who were chained together. For the first 3 days and nights, with a chain around his neck that weighed over 100 pounds, that would leave its mark on his body for the rest of his life, Baha'u'llah's feet were placed in stocks, and he was given no food or drink. He could neither sleep nor rest. One of the executioners, who was made to watch over Baha'u'lláh and the other believers in the Bab, was so moved by this horrifying experience that he attempted several times to bring him tea under his garments, which Baha'u'lláh refused. Baha'u'lláh later shared this moving account of his time in the Black Pit, which lasted 4 months. He said, quote, "We were all huddled together in one cell, our feet in stocks, and around our necks fastened the most galling of chains. The air we breathed was laden with the foulest impurities, while the floor on which we sat was covered with filth and infested with vermin. No ray of light was allowed to penetrate that pestilential dungeon or to warm its icy coldness. We were placed in 2 rows, each facing the other. We had taught them, the imprisoned Babis, to repeat certain verses, which every night they chanted with extreme fervor. God is sufficient unto me. He verily is the all-sufficing, one row would intone, while the other would reply, in him let the trusting trust. The chorus of these gladsome voices would continue to peal out until the early morning hours of the morn. Their reverberation would fill the dungeon, and piercing its massive walls would reach the ears of Nasruddin Shah, Persia's king, whose palace was not far from the place where we were imprisoned. What means this sound? He was reported to have exclaimed. It is the anthem the Babis are intoning in their prison, they replied. The Shah made no further remarks, nor did he attempt to restrain the enthusiasm of his prisoners, despite the horrors of their confinement continued to display. It was in this very grim setting that the rarest and most cherished of events was once again played out. A mortal man, outwardly human in every respect, was chosen by God to bring to humanity a new message. This experience of divine revelation, touched only on indirectly in surviving accounts of the lives of Moses, Christ, and Muhammad, is illustrated in Baha'u'llah's own words. He said, "During the days I lay in the prison of Tehran, though the galling weight of the chains and the stench-filled air allowed me but little sleep, still, in those infrequent moments of slumber, I felt as if something flowed from the crown of my head over my breast, even as a mighty torrent that precipitateth itself upon the earth from the summit of a lofty mountain. At such moments, my tongue recited what no man could bear to hear." Later, he would send a tablet to that same Shah describing the transformative power of revelation. He said, "I was but a man like others, asleep upon my couch, when lo, the breezes of the All-Glorious were wafted over me and taught me the knowledge of all that hath been. This thing is not from me, but from one who is almighty and all-knowing. And he bade me lift up my voice between earth and heaven. And for this there befell me what hath caused the tears of every man of understanding to flow." After 4 months of this intense suffering, Baha'u'llah, now ill and utterly exhausted, was released and exiled forever from his native Iran. He and his family were sent to Baghdad, and there the remaining followers of the Bab increasingly turned to Baha'u'llah for moral and spiritual guidance, and he became a leader of the community of the Bab's followers. This increasingly arose the intense jealousy of his younger half-brother, Mirza Yahya, to slander his character and try to sow the seeds of doubt among his companions. As a result of this, to remove himself from being the cause of tension, Baha'u'llah retired to the mountains of Kurdistan in 1854 at the age of 37, until 2 years later, 1856, reflecting on his divine purpose. This period of his life was similar to Moses's withdrawal to Mount Sinai for 40 days and nights, where he received the 10 Commandments according to biblical history. Christ's days in the wilderness, when it was stated in Gospel of Luke chapter 4, verse 1 to 2, and Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led by the Spirit for 40 days in the wilderness, tempted by the devil. And he ate nothing in those days, and when they were ended, he was hungry. Muhammad had a similar retreat at the age of 40 in the Arabian hills outside of Mecca. And according to Buddhist texts, the Buddha also meditated without moving from his seat for 7 weeks, 49 days, under the Bodhi tree. Yet, even in this remote region, Baha'u'llah's fame spread. People heard of a man of extraordinary wisdom and eloquence was there. When these stories reached Baghdad, the Babis, guessing that this was Baha'u'lláh, dispatched a mission to implore him to return. Residing once more in Baghdad, he reinvigorated the Bab's followers, and the stature of the community grew. His reputation spread even further, and he composed 3 of his most renowned works at that time: The Hidden Words, The 7 Valleys, and the Book of Certitude, or the Kitab-e-Iran. While Baha'u'llah's writings alluded to his station, it was not yet the time for a public announcement. Just to share with you a few of the quotes of these books. In The Hidden Words, he says, "O Son of Spirit, my first counsel is this: possess a pure, kindly, and radiant heart, that thine may be a sovereignty ancient, imperishable, and everlasting." In The 7 Valleys and The 4 Valleys, these were 2 works written in Baghdad after Baha'u'llah returned from Kurdistan in 1856. He wrote about the journey of a true seeker of a spiritual life. This journey had many valleys, starting with the valley of search and ending with the valley of true poverty and absolute nothingness. He described this station is that of dying to the self and living in God, of being poor in self and rich in the desired one. Poverty, as here referred to, signifieth being poor in that which pertaineth to the world of creation, and rich in that which belongeth to the realms of God. In the Book of Certitude, or the Kitab-e-Iran, which he wrote also in Baghdad around 1861 to 1862, in response to questions that were posed by one of the maternal uncles of the Bab and later translated by Baha'u'llah's great-grandson, Shoghi Effendi, and first published in English in 1931, he said, "In the name of our Lord, the exalted, the Most High, no man shall attain the shores of the ocean of true understanding, except he be detached from all that is in heaven and on earth. Sanctify your souls, O peoples of the world, that haply ye may attain that station which God hath destined for you." As Baha'u'llah's fame spread, the envy and malice of some of the clergy were kindled again. There was some representation from the Shah of Iran to ask the Ottoman Sultan to remove Baha'u'lláh further from the Iranian border, since his fame had gathered much attention. And so a second banishment was decreed. At the end of April 1863, shortly before leaving the environs of Baghdad for Istanbul, known as Constantinople in the English language of the time, Baha'u'lláh and his companions resided for 12 days in a garden which he named Rizwan, meaning paradise. There, on the banks of the Tigris River, he declared himself to be the one heralded by the Bab, God's messenger to the age of humanity's collective maturity, foretold in the world's scriptures. 3 of the Baha'i holy days celebrate this time of his public declaration just to the people who were there with him in this blessed garden. 3 months after departing Baghdad, Baha'u'lláh and his fellow exiles reached Constantinople. They remained there for just 4 months before a further banishment took them to Adrianople, a grueling journey undertaken during the coldest of winters. Baha'u'lláh referred to Adrianople as, quote, the remote prison. Yet despite the inhospitable conditions in which the exiles were forced to live, inspired verses continued to flow from Baha'u'llah's pen, and his message reached as far away as Egypt and India. During this time, his own half-brother again now tried to poison him, and this tragic episode left Baha'u'lláh with a tremor that showed in his handwriting to the end of his life. Beginning in September 1863, Baha'u'lláh wrote a series of letters to the leaders and rulers of the nations. In these writings, he openly proclaimed his station, speaking of the dawn of a new age. But first he warned there would be catastrophic upheavals. He summoned the world's leaders to uphold justice and asked them to put an end to war. He wrote to Napoleon III at the time, quote, regard ye the world as a man's body, which is afflicted with diverse ailments, and the recovery of which dependeth upon the harmonizing of all of its component elements. Included in the list of monarchs and rulers who received his tablets were Queen Victoria of the British Empire and Tsar Alexander II of Russia, who would later both share a granddaughter, Queen Marie of Romania, who would become Baha'i. If any of you wish to read that book that caused her to have such a transformation, you can read a copy of Baha'u'lláh and the New Era online. Continued agitation from Baha'u'llah's detractors again caused the Ottoman government to banish him one final time to the notorious penal colony of Akka. Akka was known by the Greeks and Romans, and even earlier by the ancient Egyptians, who inhabited the city with the same name, Akka, in 1350 BC. And so this city has existed for thousands of years. Muhammad is reported to have emphasized the spiritual station of that city. He said, blessed the man that hath visited Akka, and blessed he that hath visited the visitor of Akka. This is a city that Baha'is around the world can visit during their 9-day pilgrimage to Israel. In fact, all Baha'i holy places there are open to all visitors, except for this tragic time that we are now living in. Baha'u'lláh and his family arriving to this now prison city of Akka on August 31st, 1868, would now find this place desolate and isolated from the rest of the world, to then spend the many years of the latter part of his life. He was confined to a prison cell for more than 2 years, where he and his family and companions were later moved to a cramped house within the city walls. Little by little, however, the moral character of the Baha'is, particularly Baha'u'llah's eldest son, Abdul Baha, who was with him for 40 years of imprisonment, softened the hearts of their jailers. As in Baghdad and Adrianople, the nobility of Baha'u'llah's character gradually won the admiration of the community and its leaders. In Akka, while still a prisoner under house arrest, Baha'u'lláh revealed his most important work, the Kitab al-Aqdas, the most holy book, in which he outlined the laws and principles of his faith and established the foundations for a global administrative order. The Kitab al-Aqdas starts with this quote: "The first duty prescribed by God for his servants is the recognition of him who is the dayspring of his revelation and the fountain of his laws, who representeth the Godhead in both the kingdom of his cause and the world of creation. Whoso achieveth this duty hath attained unto all good." Later in that beautiful book, he stated, "This is the changeless faith of God, eternal in the past, eternal in the future." In fact, in the Baha'i faith, there are 3 beautiful principles that we all cherish: the oneness of God, the oneness of humanity, and the oneness of religion. Every messenger has brought such a book, which has caused the transformation of the human heart and thereby built a new civilization, changed the character of the people, caused the burgeoning of the arts and sciences, and created stability, peace, and a sense of community within its fold. Baha'u'llah's mission, through the over 100 volumes that he wrote in his lifetime, translated into over 800 languages and spread to every corner of the world just 138 years after his passing, is a mission summed up in one of his tablets. He states, "That which the Lord hath ordained as the sovereign remedy and the mightiest instrument for the healing of all the world is the union of all its people in one universal cause, one common faith." He said, "I am the royal falcon on the arm of the Almighty. I unfold the drooping wings of every broken bird and start it on its flight." In the late 1870s, Baha'u'lláh, while still a prisoner, was granted some freedom to move outside the city walls, allowing his followers to meet him with relative ease. In April 1890, Professor Edward G. Brown of Cambridge University met Baha'u'lláh at a mansion near Akka, where Baha'u'lláh had taken up residence. Professor Brown wrote of their meeting, quote, The face on whom I gazed, I can never forget, though I cannot describe it. Those piercing eyes seem to read one's very soul. Power and authority sat on that ample brow. No need to ask in whose presence I stood, as I bowed myself before one who is the object of a devotion and love which kings might envy and emperors sigh for in vain. 1 year before his passing, in 1891, Bahá'u'lláh wrote a book entitled Epistle to the Son of the Wolf, addressed to a prominent Muslim cleric who had persecuted the Baha'is. He wrote, quote, "Every man of discernment, while walking upon the earth, feeleth indeed abashed, inasmuch as he is fully aware that the thing which is the source of his prosperity, his wealth, his might, his exaltation, his advancement and power is, as ordained by God, the very earth which is trodden beneath the feet of all men. There can be no doubt that whoever is cognizant of this truth is cleansed and sanctified." Indeed, all of the messengers of God who have come before Bahá'u'lláh have come at a time when the people were in need of a new spiritual rebirth. Every messenger has reminded us of our spiritual heritage and exhorted us to cleanse the mirror of our souls, to rise above this physical existence through the power of prayer, fasting, and service to others. Bahá'u'lláh passed away on May 29th, 1892. In his will, he designated his eldest son, Abdu'l-Baha, as his successor and head of the Baha'i Faith, the first time in history that the founder of a world religion had named his successor in an irrefutable text. This choice of a successor is central to what is known as the Covenant of Bahá'u'lláh, enabling the Baha'i community to remain united for all time. Bahá'u'lláh said, "The all-knowing physician hath his finger on the pulse of mankind. He perceiveth the disease and prescribeth in his unerring wisdom the remedy. Every age hath its own problem, and every soul its particular aspiration. The remedy the world needeth in its present-day afflictions can never be the same as that which a subsequent age may require. Be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age ye live in, and center your deliberations on its exigencies and requirements." In another passage, he said, "This is the day in which God's most excellent favors have been poured out upon men, the day in which his most mighty grace hath been infused into all created things. It is incumbent upon all the peoples of the world to reconcile their differences and, with perfect unity and peace, abide beneath the shadow of the tree of his care and loving kindness." To hearken to that day, there is a passage in the Bible from Psalm chapter 118, verse 24. "This is the day that the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." Bahá'u'lláh stated in another passage, "The world's equilibrium hath been upset through the vibrating influence of this most great, this new world order. Mankind's ordered life hath been revolutionized through the agency of this unique, this wondrous system, the like of which mortal eyes have never witnessed. He exhorted us to see each other as members of one human family as the core of his teachings, to help an ailing world from the sickness of greed, malice, and division. He stated, "Ye are the fruits of one tree and the leaves of one branch. Deal ye one with another with the utmost love and harmony, with friendliness and fellowship. He who is the day star of truth beareth me witness. So powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth." He asked us to see each other as noble individuals capable of mirroring forth all the virtues of a saintly life. He said, "Regard man as a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom." Let us each continue on our journey that requires a spiritual education that should go hand in hand with the knowledge of the physical world that each of us share. Baha'u'lláh stated in the Kitab-i-Iran, "Only when the lamp of search, of earnest striving, of longing desire, of passionate devotion, of fervid love, of rapture and ecstasy is kindled within the seeker's heart, and the breeze of his loving kindness is wafted upon his soul, will the darkness of error be dispelled, the mists of doubts and misgivings be dissipated, and the lights of knowledge and certitude envelop his being. My hope is that each of us reflect upon the life of Baha'u'lláh, the teachings he brought, and in the words of Queen Marie of Romania, who declared her belief as a Baha'i, and whose grandparents were themselves a monarch at the time and were addressed by tablets from Baha'u'lláh himself, she stated, "Let their glorious, peace-bringing, love-creating words and lessons sink into your hearts." Thank you.
Thank you so much for your talk. I was moved personally by it. Just hearing all the stories from Baha'u'llah's life. It was really nice. So we have time for questions now. So if anybody has a question, you can put it in the chat and I will read it out. And I actually have a question. I was curious, what about Baha'u'llah's life for you personally has inspired you the most? And like, you know, what you take personally from his story.
Thank you. I think all of us, with every messenger of God, can look at their lives and see that they were all just normal human beings, and they delivered a message that was beyond them, that was divine in its nature. And as a result of that, they were all put under intense persecution. And that time of Baha'u'lláh and the Siyah Chal, when you go to see just one link of the chain, which is about this big, you can understand the intense suffering that he went through, which was not of his own accord, which he was moved to endure. And under that description that I had of his time in the Siyah Chal was probably one of the most moving times, because you hear from the messenger of God himself the type of suffering that he endured. And it allows each of us, as we go through the natural sufferings of the world, and as we try to cleanse the mirror of our own hearts, to recount for ourselves the suffering that he went through, and also many of all of the messengers of God thus far have had to endure in order to allow humanity to progress.
We have one question asking if you could talk more about the Covenant of Bahá'u'lláh and like how Bahá'u'lláh, like what he delineated in his writings about that.
Yes, as many of you may be aware, never before was there a time that a messenger of God was able to appoint an individual to be that next point of contact for the believers. And so unfortunately, there were many divisions that were created, and many different takes on the scriptures that were started. And there was a power struggle between different sects of each religion. And still today, they are in existence. This has been eliminated since Baha'u'lláh, in his will and testament, wrote that the person to whom everyone should turn would be his eldest son, who shared with him his life of imprisonment, who was the first to believe in him at a very tender age in his childhood, and who showed the type of exemplary conduct and character that each of us are asked to emulate. So he was not only the exemplar for Baha'is in human form that we could look to and learn from the testament of his life. In fact, Abdu'l-Baha came to the United States, to Canada, to Europe, to Egypt, to spread his father's teachings after he was finally freed from imprisonment under the Ottoman Empire. And he spoke in many places. You can read his in all the lectures that he gave in Paris talks, and the different another text of all of his lectures and speeches here in the United States and Canada. And in his life, he showed through his actions what it means to be a Baha'i. And so that loving link that Baha'u'lláh gave to us through Abdu'l-Baha, and then of course to Abdu'l-Baha's great-grandson, Shoghi Effendi, Abdu'l-Baha's grandson, Shoghi Effendi, who's Baha'u'llah's great-grandson, who became what is known as the guardian of the Baha'i faith, and who helped to translate many of Baha'u'llah's writings into English. And now with the Universal House of Justice, which is 9 elected, spiritually elected members who help to provide guidance for the Baha'i global community. It is that loving link that Baha'u'lláh started with Abdu'l-Baha and within his writings in the Kitab al-Aqdas, that precious, most holy book for Baha'is, where he talked about the establishment of the House of Justice in the future. We are all then sheltered under one fold, united like drops in an ocean. And that way we are not split and put into division, into contention by its very existence and how the Baha'i faith has moved so many people. We work as waves of one sea, as leaves of one tree. We are moving towards creating that kingdom of God on earth.
Thank you. Another question asks, how do Baha'is recommend to fix all the strife and conflict in the world today?
Wow, that's tough, but I can tell you, it is only natural that each of us can be affected by and moved by what is happening around us. And yet, through the power of prayer, through the power of reciting the writings, which we are encouraged to do every morning and every evening. So when we recite the writings in the morning, we prepare for the day. And when we recite the writings in the evening, we are reflecting on what we have done that day and being encouraged to, quote, let deeds, not actions, be your adorning. Each of us are empowered to effect change in this tumultuous time in which we live. It is amazing the power that one individual can have. Even just, you can see as you're driving, if you notice that someone is allowing another person into a line of cars, you're more inclined to allow another person into the line yourselves. It is through mirroring forth all the attributes that we are encouraged and virtues that we are encouraged to help develop in this physical world, that we can then strive to change the human heart in a way that can more deeply be transformative than any means done in the past. So it is both individually and collectively. Baha'is have a beautiful blueprint that has been provided by the Universal House of Justice in ways to share the joy of living a spiritual life. So we have children's classes that are open to people of all faiths, to children of all faiths, to families of all faiths. We have junior youth groups for the junior youth. We have devotional gatherings in our homes. It could even be one-on-one with someone that we share prayers with, who may be going through some difficult time or may not, and simply just be friends and remind us of that spirit that we should continue to lead our lives in. We have so many gatherings that exhort us to lead a more spiritual life. And so, yes, we live in a material world, but we have guidance on how we can live our lives in accordance with the Baha'i teachings and how we can share that with others.
Thank you. Another question asks, in what ways do Baha'is commemorate and celebrate the life of Baha'u'lláh, especially on holy days and anniversaries?
That's a wonderful question. It's a very exciting time for Baha'is. Every time there's a holy day, it's a time that we share with others. I know that for our family, whenever we go on a trip, we will dial 1-800-22-UNITE, and we will get to find out, we just leave our name and phone number, and we get to find out who the Baha'i community is in the area in which we live. If we can't find them online, we will call that number and we will go and celebrate with Baha'is around, not just in the US, but around the world. So that is a very nice way of connecting hearts. But Baha'is may celebrate, well, one of the ways that Baha'is celebrate holy days is that we do take off work. So we dedicate that time to really concentrating on the sacredness of that day. And we may, as our family is doing, for example, we may celebrate with neighbors and friends and colleagues and with our local Baha'i communities. I know in Northern Virginia, there's going to be some joyous celebrations coming up. And in every country, the celebrations may be a display of the culture, of the heritage of that country, the songs, the music. It's so beautiful to see how each Baha'i community celebrates in their own way. We will recite prayers and sing songs together. There is a special tablet called the Tablet of Visitation that we read both when we are on pilgrimage, visiting the holy places. We will recite those, especially at the resting place of the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh. And we will also recite that prayer when in our home, for example, tomorrow, we will have that for the birth of the Bab. So these are just a few ways that Baha'is enjoy celebrating. What I will say is always that there is no specific way that the Baha'is are encouraged to celebrate, or no specific direction given. It is really what moves us, what moves the community, under the guidance of the local spiritual assembly, which again is a prayerfully elected group of 9 members of every local community to help facilitate such gatherings. And then there's, of course, the National Spiritual Assembly, which is a group of 9, again, prayerfully elected members, and then the Universal House of Justice. This is the basis of the administrative order of the Baha'i Faith.
Thank you. Another question is asking, are there any particular sacred writings of Baha'u'lláh that you recommend for someone learning about the Baha'i Faith?
Yes. I would say first, it's a very easy read, and yet a read that takes a lot of thought, would be the Hidden Words. And I shared one of the Hidden Words with you, but I would encourage you to consider reading that. It's just so lovely, and so it's short, and you can read one in the morning and one in the evening. And it's just really foundational in helping to cleanse our hearts. So that's a beautiful compilation of short, pithy statements from Baha'u'lláh, which was revealed in a very special time in his life. Another book that I would encourage you, which is an even more easy read, would be Paris Talks, which is Abdul Baha's talks when he was in Paris, and it actually says what streets the address would be that he would go and speak. And it's a great way to understand how Abdul Baha would share the spiritual principles of the Baha'i faith with people who were not familiar with the Baha'i faith at the time, who were hearing it for the first time. And so this is a very easy flowing way of hearing the spiritual principles of the faith that he shared with others. I would say those two are great.
Thank you. Another question asks, could you explain what the term "the most great peace" means and what Baha'u'llah's vision is for the future?
Yes. I am, as I said before, I'm not a scholar of this is only from my own understanding. So I don't know if there's any particular way that this could be shown, but what I could say to me would be the most great peace would be a time as hoped for in all religious dispensations, a time when war and famine and people in abject poverty, and basically a time with what we see in the world that just tugs at our hearts, it will no longer exist. It will be a time of global peace that will be shared throughout the world, a time when borders will no longer, man-made borders, will no longer exist. For example, we're starting to see that in Europe, how we can move very easily from one country to another. A time when the currency may be now uniformly created in the world. A time where the economies of countries will be more equitably created, when wealth can be more justly distributed. A time when the people of the world will be able to feed their children, educate them, and see those gems of humanity shine, when we are now having so many children deprived of even the most basic of needs. This is what I envision as the most great peace. And what I find very empowering in the Baha'i faith is that it is very much in our grasp as to how soon we will reach that time. It will either be through unimaginable horrors, which we are now facing, or through consultation, the power of consultation, which we are just only seeing the glimpses of in certain institutions such as the United Nations and such. So I see this time that we're in as, yes, it is a tumultuous time, but I see glimmers of that most great peace being seamed together with an invisible thread through the power of the transformative spirit that has been ushered in by the advent of the Bab and Bahá'u'llah's coming.
Thank you. Well, if we don't have any more questions, then I want to thank you again so much for your talk and for these answers. I think that it's really inspiring for all of our lives, and there's a lot we can take back for our own personal reflection. I know I'm going to. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Bayan, and it was wonderful being here. And I wish everyone a very happy and joyous birth of the Bab and birth of Baha'u'llah celebrations to come.
Thank you. So for next week, our speaker is going to be Miss Soveida Mani, and her topic is The Secret to Living a Happy and Fulfilled Life, a Baha'i Perspective. And again, these talks occur every Saturday at noon Eastern time, so you can invite your friends and family. And if you're new to the Baha'i Faith, or if you'd like to be added to our mailing list, you can fill out the Google form that I will put in the chat. Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you all next week. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.